Welcome to Friendly Argument with J. Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Let's do this.
New stuff,
All the tangents.
some politics, booze,
Some more politics.
stuff about Kansas, and lots of cheer scenes.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching. I just received an email from one of your favorite pals,
Oh, yeah?
Nikki Haley.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
What does Nikki Haley want from you?
fellow conservative.
Oh, well,
She's
she's
your
wrong
pal.
there.
Well, so since college, I've subscribed to basically any and all. And once you get on one
Yeah,
set of lists, you're on all of them.
that's true.
So-
I get so much junk mail because I happened to donate to like two places that were like not necessarily completely politically conservative, but were like more religious freedom based
Yeah.
organizations. But because I did that and like PragerU, all of a sudden I get all of these.
You're on all of them.
I am in all of them. So anyway, what did Nikki Haley want from you aside from money? I assume.
Money for
Mhm.
sure. I've run many winning campaigns in my career. Okay, starting early and sprinting all the way until election day. Thousands of conservatives. I'm talking about taking back the House and Senate in a must-win 2022 midterm election.
Yes.
This goal is important. It is achievable. 10 seats. 10-seat majority is what not Democrats have. Nancy Pelosi has.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's so funny. But yeah, I mean the Senate is just, I mean, you don't get more razor thin than that.
Yeah.
So that's for sure. But yeah, anyway, I thought what a nice little start. She
Yep.
literally, like, I got a little pop
Mm-hmm. Right as we're starting into it.
right as we were starting. So
Yep. All right. Well, let's go ahead and intro. So, welcome to welcome to Friendly Argument with J. Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Hello.
Actually, as soon as I said that, I realized I did not have a drink. So, 1 second. Let me go rectify that.
Make it right.
All right. The whiskey I did have earlier today is good, but it's not incredibly drinkable. So instead, we're gonna do a terrible idea and go with one of these ones that I've never had before. So this is C.
I like it.
So tonight we shall be drinking the Kurayoshi, 8 years old, pure malt Japanese whiskey. It
Ooh.
starts as a zesty vanilla with almonds, moves towards an orange zest with minerals, and finishes with an oak port and sherry.
That sounds just
I'm now very excited about it. I think I was technically supposed to wait on this one until Laura wanted a whiskey, but she's in the shower and
we're in a pinch here.
we're in a
You were-
pinch.
you were
So
with no drink.
yes, so we now have this. So I'm not going to intro us again. I'm just going to start from the yeah. There we go.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Oh man, sounds awesome.
I find Japanese whiskeys are not as harsh as traditional like Scotch or Irish or even American
Oh, yeah.
whiskeys. Well, they're probably about similar to American whiskeys.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a range within each of those, and almost as you said it, like Irish is this range,
Mhm.
Scotch is this range, American, Japanese.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of
Well, see, I would flip the Scotch and Irish because it's the how much do you hate yourself range. So if you're going with a Scotch, it's like, oh, you want the most peaty, nasty bog marsh whiskey. And then the Irish like themselves a little bit better, so they're not quite as harsh. Plus, they don't have as much peat. So, and then you go to America where it's like, no, we just want to get drunk on something that tastes good. And then
we
you have
got all this corn.
yeah, and then you have the Japanese who just showed up to the scene. So
yeah, but in true Japanese fashion, just that inspired novice, like we're going to take this to this weird extreme, and it's going to be such a fun.
It's going to be very Japanese, but it's going to be a better version of like whatever.
Yeah, to everything to the absolute nth. So
like we started with cartoons. Their cartoons are better than our cartoons. We started in electronics. Their electronics are better than our electronics. Well, I guess maybe not all of their electronics now. We've kind of caught up a little bit.
Well, capability or what's in the general market? Because
I think they win general market, but I think we win capability. Like the phone game, like American cell phones are better than Japanese cell phones.
Well, theirs are more featureful. Our cell phones are probably more capable, but we don't let the general public use everything. You got to jailbreak it.
I could see that. Yeah.
So it's.
Of course, then I say that based off the fact that like our market is almost completely saturated by either Galaxy or sorry, who does Galaxy? It's
Samsung.
Oh, well, that's Japanese. So
Korea.
Wait, are they Korean? Okay.
I believe it's Korean.
Yeah, but it's, and then and Apple, which is American. So
right.
Yeah. Doesn't Microsoft have a phone? I thought the Galaxy was Microsoft.
Yeah.
Sven.
It's been so long, Sven.
It's been so long since you've done anything, Sven. What do we not pay you for?
Yeah. So 2021, friendly argument. We are preparing for episodes.
Yes. We decided on a subject beforehand, and we researched it before we met. And in traditional friendly argument fashion, both of us got to about 6 o'clock when we were starting at 6:30, and we're like, crap, I have not read the stupid article.
Absolutely true. I started at 5:30 because I thought I had the link somewhere and I couldn't find it. And I reached out to you at 6 after looking for half an hour.
Okay. I probably started at like 5:50 or something like that. Like I was like 2 or 3 pages in when I got your text.
Oh, that's so bad.
But it's okay. We're showing progress. Our next step, because I'm reading a book on podcasts, is structuring our episodes. So like we actually have like a roadmap. I think we used to have a roadmap that we didn't really follow.
Yeah, we used to have a roadmap. I think a timer, like if we were both looking at the clock that was ticking, I think would help.
I think that would.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that off air after we finish this recording.
Yeah. But the article, Time from Time Magazine.
Oh yeah, secret is. So there's a Time Magazine article by Molly Ball entitled "A Weird Thing Happened Right After the November 3rd Election: Nothing." I believe. Wait, is that the?
That's like the first line.
That's
I don't know.
First line. I printed it off because I wanted to make notes as I went. Oh no, it's The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Much better title.
Yes.
Yep.
And so what did you this article was your pick, and
this was my pick because it was in the conservative sphere of like there was an effort to, I'm not going to say, I don't think conservative sphere was saying rig the election, but at least put a thumb on the scale of the election. I don't know that go ahead.
No, please finish.
Yeah. I mean, reading through the article, I think there are some things that are like, that's not great. I don't know that it necessarily is a complete and total admittance of guilt, but we can talk into
who?
Oh, by the shadow campaign.
So this is the conspiracy between the the first thing she mentions is the corporate America, the handshake agreement between corporate America
and like basically like the left, left-wing like the labor union, I think is the first thing that she talks about. But it, like as it goes, as like you take a step back. So I guess I'll summarize the article real quick. I think so the article starts with the handshake deal between the Chamber of Commerce and the I've never actually heard of this thing because I'm not really big into the unions. AFL dot or dash CIO,
Yes.
which is apparently like the big like union, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it was a handshake agreement between the two of them that basically said, hey, we're gonna really push everything to ratify the vote after the election.
What she mentions as this handshake agreement was the joint statement released election day.
I think it's the day after election, but yeah, it was like right around then.
And then she sort of backtracks without evidence or citation or research that this agreement had happened. Like, oh, this has been.
But I don't think that was the actual point. That was kind of like the capstone of the like it culminated in this, but I don't think that's like the main thrust of what she was actually talking about.
It's a terribly, in my view, terribly weak main thrust. You know, America thinks we need to protect our elections as an institution, and two big groups amongst dozens of others. Yeah.
So yeah, yes, I would agree that it's like as an overall thing, it's not great. There, like I said, there's things in here that I would point out. I was like, maybe this wasn't great, but I would maybe quibble with. I don't think she was saying like these. I don't think these two big groups were really the. I don't think the Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO, were actually the main participants of her story. I think that's like I think to borrow from Lord of the Rings, if this is like the Battle of Minas Tirith, like if you watch the third one, it's the one where they're trying to sack the big, pretty white citadel, like circular citadel building one. I assume you know which one I'm talking about.
Of course.
Yeah. I sense sarcasm.
I think it was, I don't know enough about it to be certain, and I don't want to start talking about it.
Okay. So basically in the movie there's half of the third movie is just this huge battle right outside of like the main good guy citadel, right? And you have all of these groups coming in to attack it, and then you slowly get other groups coming in to help save them. So so you have the normal people and they're like, oh no, we're screwed, and then like all these people come, and then like the Rohirrim come and they're like, oh, we're helping you, but it's still not like the end of the save the day. And then finally what really turns the tide at the end of the day, when it's kind of like maybe we're going to be fine anyway, is that Aragorn shows up with his like ghost army, and they kill everybody.
And that is the AFL,
the Chamber of Commerce AFL handshake would be like the ghost army coming in.
Got it. Okay.
I mean, now I think back on it, the ghost army is what really won the day, but it was kind of, that gets rid of my analogy, and I don't.
This groundswell of.
Yeah, it tipped it over. Because I think they'd already killed. I think by the time the ghosts show up, they'd already killed the king of the Nazgul.
Think about the questions you're asking. Think about what.
No, that's okay. Yeah, this will be the most controversial thing, and I'm trying to remember because there's something they did to the Corsairs from Mordor. Like they took those, but I can't remember who took them. Because the pirates showed up and they're like, oh no, but then it turned out that it wasn't the pirates. I can't remember if that's when the ghosts showed up or if that was before that, or if that was somebody else, like Legolas had done something to do that.
I just want that last 15 to 20 seconds of you going back and forth, Corsairs and the pirates, and I just want that on a loop every time someone's on your like Twitter page or Instagram page, just you talking about that going in the background. And just was it definitely the ghost army, the pirates, they had the Corsairs, and it's great. It's just
welcome to
perfect. Andrew, this is the party you came for.
Yeah. So anywho, I would say the main thrust of her article is going through all of these things pre-election, all these groups pre-election who are working towards um, basically making certain things socially acceptable, like preparing the way for social acceptability of some things that were not necessarily kosher beforehand.
Okay.
That was my take on the article.
Okay. What and you brought it to the to discuss.
Yeah, I brought it to discuss because it was big in conservatosphere last week when we were looking at things to talk about as kind of like a see look there was a move to let me try it this way. So I've stated on the podcast a couple times that the elections were free, but they may not have been fair. So in the conservatosphere, this is what an article that people are pointing to say, see, look, there was an effort to maybe not rig is probably too strong of a term, but at least heavily influence the election in a particular way.
Sure. And my initial
Mm-hmm.
reading of it is duh. But but I did guess that you had mentioned that it was like a thing in conservatosphere, in the conservatosphere. So like then I think who did they believe was like messing? There's always someone trying to mess with the election, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
the
Well, so
conservatosphere boogeymen, which this article very clearly states.
yeah, and so that's I mean the reason why conservatosphere was liking it was because it's like, oh, here is like other act like no, it was a person who was who well I wouldn't call her a conservative boogie lady boogie person so much as it was like here's a reputable reporter from a reputable magazine talking about a lot of the stuff that conservatives were like, hey, this isn't cool. And I mean we can get into the article and I can kind of point out where it's like, oh hey, this isn't this is where things weren't kosher. But before we do that, do you want to talk about like your basic rundown of the article?
Yeah, just most of it was very. I think what I liked about it was that it did bring up we care about our elections overall. What I didn't like about it was I could hear her editor's voice in it,
Mm-hmm.
which was sort of like say secret a lot, say controversy, say all these conspiracy. Oh man, as much as you can use conspiracy.
Spurious was used a lot. Autocratic was used a couple times. I mean, it was traditional. There was a lot of traditional like
It's
Trump derangement syndrome verbiage in here. Which, to be fair, yeah. What?
in the trumping up in the traditional sense of the word,
Yes,
not the
yeah. And I don't know that it was necessarily her editor doing that. I haven't read really too much from slash anything of Molly Balls, but I think that might be. She's also I did go and research her. So she is a former Politico writer. She is the Times political correspondent, and she is a biographer of Nancy Pelosi.
Okay.
So I think that there may not be too much of her editor, so much as her being a little hyperbolic.
And that very very well may be. It
Mhm.
just to me it definitely seemed there was two, I guess, tones in the
Mhm.
writing, and one of them was very I'm reporting,
Yeah.
and then one of them was like this little dash of conspiracy, this little dash, these words that I'm like,
Mhm.
you just wrote 3 paragraphs where you were just basically, dragnet, these are the facts, ma'am, and just the facts. And then now you're throwing around it, it was a muddled composition.
It's not necessarily the
That's
most.
not the point of what, you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I would agree that it kind of went all over the place, which is why I was like, when I actually went and read the article, I was like, I don't know that this proves everything everyone's saying it does. Though there are some things in here that, like I said, that I was like, oh, this is admittance of things that I don't think are good. So anywho, so going through the article, let's just walk through it and see what we got here. So the first like segment is kind of just I'm not going to call it crowing, but yeah.
It was crowing up until she starts using she sort of titles the chapters.
Yeah. So yeah, once it gets to the architect, it's kind of crowing. What was it? So that's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies.
Even using the word cabal.
Yeah.
It goes to a QAnon thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, she's saying it sounds like a conspiracy theory, which to a certain extent I think it kind of does, but that's not really here nor there. Anyway, ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election; they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. So that's kind of her. That I feel like that sums up what she was trying to do. Though I feel like in that paragraph, it's like, oh, you've just undermined everything you want to do because if it sounds like a cabal of people, why would I want them to be in charge of it? But I don't know that that's apropos of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, again, my takeaway keeps being, well, democracy is fragile, but maybe I'm not the norm. Maybe we do need to understand that this is fragile.
That this is a problem.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
Well, just maybe she's right. Maybe that this is a realization point for me. And like, man, even as like fragile as I think it is, it may in fact be more fragile because we don't understand how fragile it is. We as the greater American.
I think that there's something there because there's the phrase like democracy is only one generation away from dying or something. I'm not saying it correctly, but it's the basic. I'm sorry.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And like I think there is I think there's truth there, and so I think she's maybe right in that, but I don't think that she makes her point well. Particularly because if what she's saying is like, oh, here's all these people who did a lot of work to like change perceptions and make the election go a particular way, that seems to me like that sounds like you're not letting democracy have its day. But
were they trying to make sure that the election went in a certain way, or were they trying to fortify the election to, you know what I mean? I think
that it could be. I think it's yes to both of those. I think it's yes and yes because I think based on reading this article, the idea was Trump equals authoritarian or tyrant. Tyrant does not equal democracy. Therefore, Trump must be opposed.
Oh, see, interesting. Because my thing was, this guy's been attacking elections, the institution of elections, since before the 2016 election. So we need to fortify this against a person in a very powerful position coming at it guns ablazing. That's the only gear he knows. So yeah, we really need to do that. Oh, and on top of that, there's this pandemic, so we got to figure out another set of circumstances to so that's how which
I guess it's so would you agree that maybe it's yes to both? I think it's just a matter of how you I think it's just more of a matter of how you perceive it, how you perceive what's going on.
That could be but I mean, is there any dispute that Trump in general, I mean, he was if you like Trump and you assume goodwill on his behalf, you see him as shaking things up and taking it to the man and all that. And if you don't, you see him as, if you don't assume goodwill and you assume that he's just self-interested, that he is anti-institution and absolutely like attacked every structure that he could, and he brings uncertainty. at least at the absolute least, I think just about anybody could say he is just the personification of uncertainty.
Sorry, I'm giving myself a second to see if I agree with that premise. Let me repeat it back and just make sure I understand. Are you saying that Trump is whatever Trump does, he tends to explode, and so we don't know how that particular thing is going to be explode, and that is the way he's the personification of uncertainty?
Well, that and in the more, well, he's going to kind of say one thing, he's going to overstep day one. He's going to pull back the statement that then he's going to say he didn't say that. Then he's going to say he said it different. And you're taking it out of context. Like, you can never pin down. It's a courtroom. He treats, in my view, he treats the world as a courtroom, and don't give the other side any ground. You're not, this is a court case. It's them versus me. And you can't say you can't agree with anything, or that's a good point, or, there's no middle ground with him. And so he's trying to evade that. And if you're looking for things to get shaken up, this is what you want. This is what you're looking for. And I think a lot of people want things shaken up. They feel stagnation, and and I think it's there to be felt. Absolutely. But that's what I think Trump brought to the presidency, regardless of if you liked him or not. Like, if you think of him, with goodwill, he shook it up. If you think of him poorly, it was uncertain and
yeah. And okay, that statement I can agree with.
Yeah.
That in that manner I can agree with, because I think that it is a perception of Trump dictates how you think whatever was going on.
Yeah.
Just because personally, because I think that our institutions have lost a lot of credibility and legitimacy, for the past 10, 15 years.
Since Watergate.
Yeah. I mean, since there probably even before that, but it's intensified probably since Bush 2, term 2, incredibly so during the Obama years, and then even more so during the Trump era.
Yeah.
And so it's I'll be more suspicious of our institutions than I would of any particular politician.
Yeah, it's all, I see it all as us, it's so tough. It's tough for me to.
That's fine. And I can't argue against your worldview to you. So yeah. I'm going to try not to attempt anymore.
Yeah, but there's something to what you're saying, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're inside the article.
So then we get to the architect, and she talks a lot about this Mike Podhowzer, who I've never heard of before, but apparently he's big in the Beltway circles. He's a bigwig up in the unions, and he does a lot of basically data campaigning. He's like the 539? I can never remember the numbers.
501c3?
No, 538. The numbers wonk. Like that they do basically stats on everything, but they do a lot of the political ones. I think
yeah, 539.
Is it 539 or 538?
I want to say
it's
539, but
it is 538. 538. Yeah, I was wrong the first time, right the second time. So anyway, basically he starts, according to her, putting together analysis of what's going to happen and starting to just do coalition building, which, whatever, I don't really care at this point. And I don't think most people care, because that seems like just traditional opposition research, particularly in the Trump era. You don't want Trump to win. Yeah. So
again, I would say it sounds to me like the thrust of the article, in her words, is that this campaign to fortify the election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely the way I think she perceives it. is that it was an effort to fortify the election.
And you're stating that the conservative sphere and maybe yourself included see this article as, see, they were against Trump.
Yeah, I think I think that's one way to summarize it. It's more of the things. I think the bigger thing in the conservative sphere is that I'm trying to find it so I can just quote it directly. Because unfortunately I have a very bad habit of just highlighting everything, which means nothing is highlighted. So
yeah.
Okay, so then we get to the alliance, and the first paragraph on that is on March 3rd, Podhowzer, I think I might be pronouncing his name, but I'm going to go with Podhowzer, drafted a 3-page confidential memo titled "Threats to the 2020 Election." Trump has made it clear that this will not be a fair election, and that he will reject anything but his own re-election as faked and rigged. He wrote. On November 3rd, should the media report otherwise, he will use the right-wing information system to establish his narrative and incite his supporters to protest. The memo laid out 4 categories of challenges: attacks on voters, attacks on election administration, attacks on Trump's political opponents, and efforts to reverse the results of the election. So in their defense, like, I feel like at least 3 of those are legitimate.
A lot of common ground there.
Yeah, like that is a lot of what we saw Trump do. I don't know if I would agree on the attacks on the voter part of it, but he did attack a lot of the election administration. He did it. I mean, he was going to attack his political opponents because that's what every politician does. So that's kind of.
I think quite a few people, myself included,
Mhm.
would see mail-in votes are illegitimate and do not vote by mail-in as attacks on a voter. Because that's
okay. Well, I mean, yeah, by that definition, yes, and we'll get into the mail-in vote. Like, that's one of the things with the mail-in voting that we'll get to. Then he secures a bunch of stuff, including some never Trumpers. Secure the vote. They need to pay for postcards letting people note they could vote absentee, or in some states to mail in ballots to every voter. They need additional staff. All right, so this is where they start. This is where their group starts basically, in some cases, applying pressure. In other cases, putting out propaganda is not a fair word. Information campaigns on the new ways that voting can happen.
Okay.
Yeah. And they got a lot
because there was a lot of COVID and
because there was a lot of like, oh, how do we do this COVID? Which I think we can both agree, like, COVID made this election by default made this election weird. Like, I think there was I think there was a lot of the fear of COVID is overblown to a certain extent, but that may not be, like, just looking at numbers of who's dying and how. But that being said, like, there is, like, everyone should be able to vote, so we needed to do extra steps to prevent those who are at risk to be able to.
Agreed. And particularly the timing of the changes of a lot of these COVID related changes, very 11th hour.
Yeah, which is weird because they didn't have to be.
Well, from ones that I you have these conservative legislators or you know what I mean, that were they didn't want any changes, so it was held off, and then it could only, there's some situations like that. I want to say Ohio, I know they added 2 days for mail-in ballots to keep coming in after, because they had more mail-ins, you know what I mean, like, and so if you're looking for conspiracy, absolutely you could point to the timing of things. But I'm not looking for a conspiracy. I do think that COVID made it weird. I do think that some of them seem like reasonable adjustments. What always jumped out at me, though, was the timing. That was like, wow, I'm really surprised how late that was.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I would say that, like, because conservatives generally in our weird partisan world, like, every issue becomes a political issue. Like, I could see how there was a lot of conservatives who were like, no, we're not going to change the laws. That being said, I think that there probably could have been, well, my guess is that both sides were unwilling to meet anywhere close to the middle, because, like I said, there probably could be some. I would say mail-in voting, particularly universal mail-in voting, is not an answer.
when you say universal mail-in voting, like
So like
everybody's
mailing
allowed
out ballots to every person and having them mail them back in is not an answer, or it's
Okay.
not a legitimate or good.
You just don't like it. You don't
I
like
think
that.
I think the potential for fraud is really bad, and I also think that voting should be done on election day. Like I don't think voting before election day is good policy or good practice.
Hmm.
And just sorry.
Why?
Because not all of the information that is available will be available until the last thing of election. Like things happen and shift dramatically up until, and so like you need to vote on the day that we've appointed so that you are as word
Informed?
informed, yes, an informed of voter as possible. I also don't like the lack of ability to validate that this is that a particular vote was cast by a particular person when it comes to mail-in voting.
For sure.
Like there's a lot of talk about, if you're conservative, you just say like general voter registration laws. If you're liberal, you tend to call it voter suppression. And so acknowledging that there are two sides to this, I personally don't think that is appropriate for someone to vote unless they have shown ID that they are in fact the person. And I don't see that as being like an unreasonable request.
Yeah, it gets to the immigration issue,
Mm-hmm.
documented folks, and
But I mean, if you are a legal citizen of the United States and therefore eligible to cast a vote, you will by definition have some kind of documentation.
yeah, I don't know all the rules on that. What I do know is that as far as industrialized democracies,
Mm-hmm.
our way of voting overall tends further to I'm trying to think of the nice word for it, more suppressive than open. um weekday elections, we're the only ones that do that. That's silly.
Yes.
um
I think both sides of the
voter
aisle could agree on that.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about this. There's a lot of common ground here. We could have a voters' holiday. We could have
I
a
think
weekend
that
only.
yes, President Voting Day should be a national holiday. Preferable. Well, we can't. It would be too hard because it's a constitutional change. But making that day a holiday, like you make it a federal holiday, you make it a banking holiday, and right there, you're going to force most people to be off work.
Yeah, you're going to be off. So,
and I mean, you'll be like no employer can legitimately say, "Hey, you have to work on this day."
Yeah, and historically, our record is pretty lousy as far as suppression. So,
well, I guess that are you talking about like
there's a lot of degrees between opening things up a little bit and fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And we have very low fraud. It's maybe not the best in the world, but it's very low fraud in our elections.
Well, yes, in previous elections, yes. I'm not going to agree or disagree on this election for at least another year or two. I know there's several places that are going to voter registration places, particularly in Nevada, and are finding that people voted from empty lots. So it's I mean that happens in every election, so I'm going to want to see like numbers, but since this is the first time that we have had universal mail-in ballots from several very high population states, like I can't in good faith say, oh yeah, we probably had the same amount of minimal or de minimis voter fraud, without a huge audit.
If we had 10 times more voter fraud in this election, we would still be among the lowest.
Granted, but I can't in good faith say, oh yeah, like I can just dismiss it as 10 times. It could easily be 100 or 1,000, because the ability for fraud, the potential, when you go in auditing, when you're looking at fraud, there's a triangle of three things you have to look at. You have to look at motive, you have to look at incentive, and you have to look at not ability, but
opportunity.
Right? And so with mail-in voting, all three of those become significantly greater. Well, motive
Yeah,
becomes significantly greater, but it definitely, but opportunity and I'm not even that drunk yet, which is frustrating.
there was motive and
Motive,
opportunity. So it's the second one. Was that incentive?
incentive. And well, in this election, so I would say opportunity increased, exponentially. Incentive, because this was a very contentious election.
Exponentially?
Exponentially, yes, exponentially. If you go from having to either request an absentee ballot, which has a process of certifying you are who you are, or going into a place in order to vote, which again, at least you have to at least do a signature and someone has to see you, versus an anonymous person dropping off things into a mailbox.
You set up to work. You tried to work a polling place this 2020.
Yes, I did try to work at a polling place.
But you did not. You haven't before.
I have not because there was enough people volunteering in the state of California, particularly Los Angeles County, that they did not need a first-term poll worker.
Gotcha. Well, so absolutely do that. I haven't worked a polling place, but I've canvassed and campaigned, as within the reasonable distance and all that, and certainly been in enough polling places with them and all that back in Chicago. I think it would be really informative, even with Chicago, which is probably historically one of the worst, most fraud in the country. They do not hesitate to throw out a vote. if there is anything out of sorts with it, it's in you don't get a vote.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, and that does make me personally. I'm sorry.
I think that would be good for you to see firsthand.
And that's fine. And like even you telling me makes me feel a little bit better about it, but it doesn't change my mind on my original argument. Like just looking at like, okay, so maybe the filters will catch a significant number of them, probably. But what I'm saying is in this election, incentive was drastically higher and opportunity was exponentially greater. So that I would not be surprised if we had exponential more fraud, which is different, which again makes this, and then because that was the case, this election is not like other elections.
I would agree that this election is not like other elections. Basically, your adjectives I would quibble with.
Okay, sure. Either way, my main point is I don't think that mail-in voting is an appropriate method of solving the problem. I think more polling places would have been a better or not. Yeah, more polling locations would be a better what's the word I'm looking for?
Solution?
Better solution. I think maybe extended hours would have been a better solution. Hell, just like getting everyone to declare a state holiday or a national holiday. Like that's pretty easy.
I think that solves so many problems.
Yeah. Like just like those three things right there, those are easily ways to do it. But like I don't think mail-in voting, I think is a political ploy. So anyway, so the rest of going back to our article, there is several stated pushes within it. Most the one I was just reading was securing the vote was when they start talking about how they found private philanthropy to step in and kind of help with the getting the word out there campaign. Let's see. They also
you don't like that.
I dislike it because I don't think that was a good. They were championing a good solution or not a solution I find to be bad, and making an effort to normalize it. So I don't have a problem with the method. I just have a problem with the not the mean, the end or the reason.
So you don't mind the private philanthropy's involvement in public elections, but
Well, I
You
mean, I
don't-
can't in good faith, like I can't in good faith say I have a problem with it, because if I donate to a private philanthropy that fights abortion laws, like that's public elections. Like I think that is fine. Like if you want information to go out there, then I think it should go out there. So I don't have a problem with the methods that they used.
Hmm.
I mean, I find it interesting that I think Chan Zuckerberg is Mark Zuckerberg's wife, right?
Oh, maybe.
I think. But so the Chan Zuckerberg Institute like funded most of it that they didn't get, most of what they needed that they didn't get from the U.S. government. Yes. So anyway, it goes on to say the institute's work helped 37 states in D.C. bolster mail voting, which we've already talked about. I don't like, and so
you don't like that.
yeah, and so there was which I don't think is really a surprise to anyone, that there was a bunch of Democratic, I mean, I won't say operatives, but at least associates pushing for mail-in voting.
Yeah, I mean, we want to open it up. We want to we've again, you look at the other industrialized democracies, and our system is the most suppressive out of those.
Well, I guess maybe, and this is where I want to ask, why do you say suppressive?
Why do I say suppressive?
Mm-hmm. Why do you define it as suppressive? Because from where let me say it this way, and then you can argue why you think I'm wrong in the way I look at it. Because in my mind, it should one vote, one citizen, one vote, right? So we need to make sure that one citizen is getting one vote. So I don't see I don't understand why it is a bad bar to prove you're a citizen. I get to vote now. How is that? So walk me through why that is either suppressive, or what you think is on top of that is making it suppressive. Sorry, one more thing, because whereas so the left always says there's no such thing as voter fraud, and the right always says there's not such thing. There's very minimal voter suppression.
Okay.
So this is just to maybe help you see where the equation is coming from in this conversation. Like I will slough off people talking about voter suppression in the same way you'll slough off people talking about voter fraud.
Yeah, I mean, again, in my mind, it's evidence. We have a lot of states that have suppressed minorities.
Okay, historically, but in the past, we'll say 30 years, what's the evidence?
That they, I forget what it was. There was a civil rights law. Didn't prepare it, but the Alabama, Mississippi, several other states, but those two certainly weren't able to govern their. They didn't have the final say in their elections. The federal government did, because of how historically bad.
Granted, but when were those laws overturned?
They were overturned I want to say within the last 10 years. Okay. And the evidence since then has, in those areas, in those states, those have gotten, the suppression is back. And it's not, it's keeping one person from getting one vote. It's the right person. I'll choose who gets a vote. I'll choose who gets one vote. And we don't need that. I think I'm not saying like open it up to just hand out, leave a stack of ballots on the corner, and whoever grabs one, you get to vote as many times as you want. But I think that we have a long way to go. We're a long way off from voter fraud being the biggest issue.
Okay. So, I mean, granted that we have not researched the particular thing that you're stating on. Yeah, because I mean, your site. I mean, we're talking again this because we are friendly argument, and we are at the level of two people talking at the bar on purpose. Like I guess I would have to see the proof of that, because that feels like common knowledge or common wisdom argument more than an actual thing. Sorry, I'm trying to Wikipedia.
And we can stick with the article that we actually both did read.
Yeah,
I want
yes,
some credit
that's
for
probably
that.
the better thing because I guess so. I mean, if that's being like, if what you're saying is true, I guess there's no point in belaboring that point. I don't particularly see that happening, and I see a lot of the arguments that are being made for it happening as these are standard things that should be done, like requiring some form of ID and purging the voter rolls on a regular basis. Like,
Yeah,
that seems like common practice to me.
Is that all? Is that the whole story? You know, like,
I mean,
people were registered, they're still alive, and they get purged from the voter rolls.
okay, yeah, and so I mean, you need like
Georgia had a lot of that in this year, and
but there were also a lot. The reason they did that was they went in and audited their data, and they're like, hey, there's a lot of people who are either dead or have moved, and so we need to purge the voter rolls. Like, I don't see that as a problem. Plus, like, at least in California and Kansas, there's ample opportunities to register. I would assume Georgia has same day registration.
I don't know.
I don't know if they do. If they don't, then they ought to. But
there's certainly a lot of anecdotal evidence that that I can cite, but that's not data.
Yeah.
But the data tends to show that, at least in Georgia, that these were specific areas, specific counties.
Yeah. And like I said, I've heard those as Democratic talking points, but I don't see nothing that I've seen leads me to buy into it as anything other than.
Have you ever had you thought you were eligible to vote and then you turned out you weren't eligible to vote?
Yeah, back in Kansas.
And do you remember the circumstances?
Yeah, I showed up and I was like, oh, I thought I registered. And they're like, well, let's see your driver's license. And I showed them my driver's license. They're like, okay, you're good. And they registered me.
So it was like a same day registration situation. Okay, so I went to I lived in a pretty conservative county in high school, and I went to college in a cornfield like most of us Midwesterners, and
I was next to the chicken farm. Thank you very much.
Oh,
because that's because I went to college in Arkansas.
Oh, that's it. That's nice. You went south. I like that. So I thought I was eligible to vote where I lived, my address, but the conservative powers that be in Lake County, Illinois, if you reside most of the time most of the year, most of the previous 12 months outside of the county, you even registered, you don't get to vote in the county, or Lake County. So that is very clearly directed at college students, which tend to vote Democrat.
Yes. That being said, it's not. I don't see that as an unreasonable. It's not an unreasonable law. It's unreasonable that it was not stated beforehand.
So I don't worry about the bad ideas. I worry about the good ones. Warren Buffett. It sounds like a good idea, and there's a lot of bad ideas that can be stated to make them sound like they're good ideas when they are in fact not. There are very few college students end up residing in the county that they went to college in, but they do end up at very frequently. I'm one of very few that don't live in the county where I went to high school. Most of my other buddies from high school still live in that county. And these are long-term decisions, these elections.
Yep.
Who's going to years and years in advance. So yes, they absolutely should be able to vote. Yes, that is absolutely voter suppression. Yes, it is ageist. Yes, it is.
Well, so here's the thing. So things you just stated to me sound like arguments against why college students should vote in their county. Because if you're going to move away, right, and you're not going to come back, and they're long-term decisions. The people in that county should be making, who are going to be affected by those decisions, should be
Right, but most don't. Most college students do not.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be voting in where they're going to reside for the however many.
Yeah. So I mean, so if that's the law in your county, then you should register to vote in the county where your college is.
That's not where I'm going to most likely live afterwards.
No, but it's where you're currently living during that election. Like, I don't get to,
Every
just because
other
I'm
doc-
planning on not living in just because I don't get to vote in Kansas, even though that's where, I was living in the last election. No, the election before.
Where
I live is where I should vote.
There was a
What?
census taken
Mhm.
while I was in college too. Guess who wanted me as part of the county then?
Well, I mean, yes, that's, yeah.
No,
And I
you
will say that's politics. Yes. And they shouldn't have.
See
Yeah.
the-
I agree with you. I agree with you that if they're not going to let you vote when you are at college, then they shouldn't count you in the registration. Like, I agree there's hypocrisy there, but I can say that one thing is right and another thing is wrong.
Let's take that as the common ground.
Yeah.
Then. But it's very clearly ageist voter suppression. Very clearly.
But again, you're defining it as suppression. And I don't, based off of the arguments you gave, I don't see that as suppression.
Most college students
Mm-hmm.
live after college, go back to the county where they lived. If
Do
they leave the county, yes.
Okay, I guess that's
Vast
I mean,
majority.
I guess I'd have to see data, because in my experience, it's completely the opposite.
Well, maybe
Very few people I know. Very
county centric. I don't know.
Yeah, like it very well could be. But I also come from what you're saying is you come from a very rural county, whereas and something of a rural college. Is that fair to say?
I think it was the most. I lived in the poorest town in the most affluent county in Illinois.
Okay.
And I went to a school in a cornfield.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and so like my experience is like I come from a very suburban urban county, like a semi-urban semi-suburban county, and I went to
Wichita?
Topeka.
Near Topeka.
Yeah, Topeka. So Topeka is technically a city. Like, it has the population to be a city, but it's like barely hits that definition. Where like an extremely large town is really what most people would consider us.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and then I went to college in Siloam Springs, Arkansas, which is a part of the general Walmart sphere down in Northwest Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like technically it was a rural place, but it was urbanized effectively.
In Arkansas?
In Arkansas.
Where you went to school?
Where I went to school. Like, it was located in a rural area, but most everything and everyone I would have interacted with there was more suburban or urbanite. Right. And then I went to the University of Kansas for my master's degree. So like, and I could see maybe more people from KU, particularly those because a lot of people come from Kansas City to go to KU, whereas the more rural people go to Kansas State. So maybe with the bigger places, that could be true. I could see that as being.
Yeah, I mean, almost everybody that I went to school with was from like 3 counties in the northwestern part of Illinois.
Yeah.
Drove 4 hours to school, drove 4 hours back.
Yeah.
And so it was just, I guess it's just a population center sort of situation.
Yeah. And like, I went to a small private Christian school. Like, everyone came it was like average of 8 hours or 4 to 5 hours to get there. But then they moved all over the place. Some of them stayed in Siloam. Some of them moved other places. A very few of them moved back to where they were from. And then when it was in my master's program, most everyone moved to Kansas City, regardless of whether they were there from Kansas City or not.
Got it. We're about an hour in.
We are about an hour in. So let me point out the thing that I think
totally focused.
Yeah, there's one. We've kind of talked about the mail-in vote thing, which is, like I said, I think that this doesn't prove what a lot of people in the conservative sphere prove so much. It's like, everyone knew there was going to be a concerted effort to change things, and this just puts names to faces. So I don't think that it's like I don't think it's a golden bullet per se. The only thing that I really thought was like kind of damning is the paragraph right before spreading the word. I don't remember who Quinn was, but Quinn's research gave ammunition to advocates pushing social media platforms to take a harder line. In November 2019, Mark Zuckerberg invited 9 civil rights leaders to dinner at his home, where they warned him about the danger of the election-related falsehoods that were already spreading unchecked. It took pushing, urging, conversations, brainstorming, and all of that to get to a place where we ended up with a more rigorous rules and enforcement, says Vanita Gupta, president and CEO of the Leadership Conference of Civil and Human Rights, who attended the dinner and also met with Twitter CIO Jack Dorsey and others. Gupta has been nominated for Associate Attorney General by President Biden. It was a struggle, but we got to the point where they introduced the problem. Was it enough? Probably not. Was it later what we wanted? Yes, but it was really important, given the level of official disinformation, that they had these rules in place and were tagging things and taking them down. So I have 2 problems with this information revealed on this paragraph.
Okay.
First problem is the rules and enforcement issue that social media has done, because in my experience, it has not been applied evenly. Like, I haven't seen a lot of stuff, left-wing stuff, getting taken down, even though it's clearly false information. Though I have seen a lot of right-wing stuff getting taken down. Which, again, I don't care, as long as if stuff's not gonna get put out there by one place, fine. That's right now it's their prerogative, but it has to be applied fairly, and I'm not seeing that. The other problem I'm seeing is the person who convinced the social media platforms, or at least was a major part in leading the charge, is now being tapped as part of the current administration's DOJ. And it reeks of, maybe not foul play is maybe a little too strong, but definitely of
Rewarding someone for a good job.
Yeah, well, rewarding someone for a good job that helped me.
Self-interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
Trump had done this, if Trump had won and somebody had done this for Trump, I think there would be people screaming bloody murder about it. If he then appointed him as the second highest person in the DOJ.
Here, I could totally see that. I could absolutely see that. I genuinely think if for me, I won't speak for the media. I won't speak for, not an avatar of the left at the moment. I would genuinely look at the person that Trump put up. If I saw them as the most qualified or one of the most qualified, I think they're very qualified, and they agree with Trump's worldview. I get why they're there.
Mm-hmm.
In my view, at least I can't think of a time when it wasn't the case, where Trump was putting forward a highly qualified person that agreed with him. He just put forth people that agreed with him. And
I would say A.G. Barr would probably be a notable exception to what you just said, but William Barr, the Attorney General.
Oh, God, he campaigned for the job with his little article.
I still saw him disagree with Trump quite a bit.
Reluctantly.
I mean, that is your perception of it. I have my perception of it.
11th hour, last minute, yeah, he stood up for the obvious, that it was a fair and free election, and by all standards, a good election.
Mm-hmm. But I wasn't talking about just the election stuff. I'm saying throughout his tenure as Attorney General, I saw him disagree with Trump. On things. I also thought he was very highly qualified and good AG, but that's apropos of nothing. Yeah. What I'm saying here is, and I don't know that
the resume for it. I mean, when they put him up, I could see why someone with his resume would be in that position. I mean, he's held
Gupta or Barr.
Barr,
yes, and he was the Attorney General before that.
That's what I'm saying.
He had been. So But that was more to your specific point about Trump appointing people. And like, yes, Trump did appoint people. He did do a lot of what a lot of politicians do and appointed people, allies, to positions.
But allies to positions, and here's the thing. I do think that Trump did things like all people are self-interested.
Mm-hmm.
All politicians are particularly self-interested. And then there's this extra layer of Trump icing on the cake of self-interest,
Mm-hmm.
where it was, I don't give an F about anything else. Loyalty to me, and just do what I tell you to do, and you will be rewarded. And that is it. That is the beginning and the end. It's governance by like a 2-year-old who just, mine. In my view, that is all that I saw from him.
I was going to say, yes, I can see how that could be a perception you would hold.
Yes, that is absolutely a perception that I would hold.
So anyway, taking a couple steps back with looking at Gupta, I find it problematic because I've said, I've seen a lot of stuff before the election, even, of social media platforms not calling balls and strikes so much as, say, favoring one side over the other. And it concerns me that the person who was even more pushing them to be that way is now an associate attorney general.
Do you think disinformation is an issue?
It depends on what you mean by disinformation. There's a lot of talk about disinformation in a lot of media outlets right now. But if you look at like what's defined as disinformation, it's stuff they don't like.
So this is where
I'm sorry.
This is where I'm going to start talking about legs again. But go ahead.
Okay, so let me make a concrete example. The Hunter Biden laptop issue was considered before the campaign was considered disinformation. 3 months later, it is now like a known thing that this was happening, that Hunter Biden was under federal indictment or investigation over business dealings with China.
Was it considered disinformation, or was it considered?
It was flagged and suppressed as disinformation.
It was. Say again.
It was flagged and suppressed as disinformation before the campaign.
So
it was fact check false by political or what's the Pinocchio person? It's not political, like the fact checkers who use Pinocchios.
Oh, okay. I know that there's different ones, but I don't know the ones.
Either way, it was fact check as false before the election. It is now fact check. Sorry, it was fact checked as false and suppressed as disinformation before the election. Now it is no longer fact checked as false or suppressed because it is a known thing that most of the major news outlets have reported on. Second example, Andrew Cuomo with putting people with COVID back into nursing homes, which led to more nursing home deaths, was flagged and suppressed as disinformation before the campaign. It is now one of the biggest news stories going around.
Sure. So to take the first one first, I did not hear it at the Biden's son's laptop issue called disinformation. It absolutely was suppressed, and I used that word as I use it. I heard it was within 90 days of election day, and so this was an issue that in 2016 that they had with Hillary and Trump, and so the news outlets were very reluctant to do anything with anything in that amount of time.
Why? So, is it not a news story? Is it not information that the voters ought to know?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what they're thinking.
Because it seems pretty convenient.
My guess is that it was that traditionally has been the modus operandi, the MO of the news outlets in elections going back in America before our time.
I'm ignorant of that. Can you point to some some other examples? And
Well, no, I read this article. I didn't prepare.
That's fair. I just you said the thing, so I assumed you had some particular things in mind.
I mean, they wouldn't show FDR, fumble to get in and out of his chair. You know what I mean? They wouldn't report that JFK was having affairs. Like they used things. They used their judgment to suppress things, for sure. What I'm guessing is if it was too on the line, factually, they might have said, let's err on the side of not putting it out there. But again, I don't know, and I'm coming at it from it's not making much news now. And I have heard the Cuomo issue with COVID, which is awful, genuinely. And it is not a particularly big issue. It's unbelievable. I mean, I think it's going to definitely going to come up in his reelection. Like that is a big miss. So I do think that will be an issue.
So do you think that the Andrew Cuomo story, if it had broken out, particularly because he was considered the best governor in America before the election, that wouldn't have affected the presidential election?
No. You think that would have affected?
Very much so.
You do?
Yeah, because it would be an example of democratic rule that would be used as a, hey, look, this is what happens when you have Democrats in charge. Do you want this to happen? They're dirty crooks. Easy campaign point.
I mean, maybe
the Hunter Biden laptop even more so. It's like, hey, do you want this guy whose son is clearly cashing in on his name to be in the White House?
I am absolutely happy. Any policy made by people whose children are cashing in on their name, across the board, wipe the slate clean of anything, any appointments that they made, and any policies that they put in place. Absolutely happy to take it off the books.
Okay, but I'm saying, would that not have been? Would that? Great, I'm agreed with that. I mean, that's probably most of our politicians.
We get 3 justices back. We get, yeah, man, I'm in on that.
Please.
Yeah, I mean,
you'd lose a lot of the other ones. You'd lose most of the other ones. Chelsea Clinton, the Obama girls.
They could all have cashed in on their names so much more huge. No way. They're not even, they're camera shy compared to the Trumps.
Well, I mean, Melania, the internships and appointments that both of the Obama girls got because their last name was Obama, with like high level Democratic voters or campaign, whatchamacallums.
Do you think you could pick either of the Obama girls out of a lineup?
Yeah,
I could. And I definitely could with Ivanka Trump and Eric Trump. Like it's not even a contest.
Yes, I could probably pick out at least one of them in a lineup.
I mean, I think that's clear. But if anybody disagrees,
what I'm saying is, like, I don't think you win as big as you win in that particular argument.
It's fine. I'm not judging size here.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and even then, I think the only one who's cashing in on Daddy's name and wasn't appointed by Daddy is Laura Trump, running in North Carolina. Maybe Ivanka if she runs in Florida.
And she married into it too.
Yeah.
Not even by blood. So.
Yeah. The rest of them were just appointed to do stuff in Daddy. They weren't cashing in on. They weren't selling access to Daddy. At least not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
They have not been accused of selling access to Daddy. Let's put it that way. Whereas most of the Biden family has been. Or I guess I shouldn't say most. One son and 2 brothers.
I've made my point.
Okay. And I think your point's stupid.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll take the 3 justices back. That's
That's
what
fine because I know I'll get all of the rest of them gone.
all the rest of.
Pretty
Oh,
much, we won't have a Supreme Court appointee. We will have no executive orders. Oh no, this is great. I like this. We have to reappoint all of our Supreme Court justices. We'll have to undo every executive order. We'll get rid of most of the federal bureaucracy. Oh, this is lovely. No, let's make this a thing. Let's make this a thing.
If your definition of cashing in is a much more
I was only my original definition was selling access to dad.
Oh, well, that was not what was stated.
Okay, well that was what he's accused of.
Okay, well, I'm sure that hasn't happened at all in the Trump family, so all of your stuff is safe.
Oh, okay. I just when you opened it up, I just think it opens it up more. Either way. I'm just on a rant now. I can get rid of a good chunk of the current federal bureaucracy. I'm very excited about this.
You are. Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when you get excited.
Yep.
So other points on the I think disinformation is a huge issue, and I think that there's and this was something that I read the studies. I had to read the studies of that negative. There is a point where more information isn't good. It actually hurts the results of elections, and it hurts the electorate to be exposed to certain types of information. And now all the information that we see is those types of information.
So can you define the types both for myself and our listening audience?
So this was back in 2000, between 2000 and 2002. So we don't have the social media like we do now, but it was a study primarily of negative campaign ads. And what they found is that they are effective in suppressing vote, and they are effective in hurting the other side. You can cause, it's easier to cause damage than it is to build. Yes. Surprise. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, a universal truth is being exposed in this particular area.
Yeah, and guess what? Like the social science bore out that evidence. So, but the thing was there are unintended consequences of that too. And that is the voter suppression. That is that people don't know what to believe anymore. And the real issue with not knowing what to believe, the disinformation or misinformation, is when people start to see things that are real, in my view, like a January 6th, they can't judge it anymore. They can't tell if this has legs. Should it have legs? Well, there's thoughts on both sides. Oh, geez, like, and when stuff is clearly truth, they can't assess it anymore. And and since 2000 to 2002, I mean, this has just gotten exponentially worse. And that someone that is helping us figure out, deal with the disinformation issue, I think absolutely has a spot in the DOJ. No
okay,
problem.
so I guess I think everything you're saying is correct up until you have somebody who's deciding what's disinformation and what's information.
Who should decide? I
think so. I call me naive and optimistic, but I think people should decide. Like if you put in a small group of people who decide, then those people are the people who dictate what reality is. And I don't think that's healthy, particularly in a republic.
So what is the answer?
So the answer the idealistic answer is better neutral journalism and more information presented as factually as possible without adding in not justifications. What's the word I'm looking for?
Opinions, commentary,
meaning behind things. So if we go in with the January 6th incidents, you had a couple thousand people storm the Capitol, right? Some of them were there to...
You had an insurrection.
Yeah, we had an insurrection. Some of them were there. They were very clearly Trump supporters. And then at the end of the day, that's pretty much the facts. After that, we start asking meaning. Like we could go into more of like what's later on. We would have facts that are like, well, okay, so this was planned beforehand. These people were, other like more and more mitigating certain nuance to the circumstances, which can be reported on later. But on the day, what we knew is a couple thousand people who were clearly Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. And that's all that needs to be said if you're just doing neutral journalism. It's not because what this person said so. It's not because this other person said so. There's like where the blame lies is on the people who did it. And then you can talk about all of the stuff leading up to it. Actually, no, you can't even do that because that's editing.
So what would have had to have happened for, like, what would have made you say Trump is responsible for January 6th, the insurrection of January 6th?
Completely responsible and not a
significant. He was the primary reason for the January 6th insurrection. And I'll give you a second. I'll give you a second,
Yeah.
to think about it. And then maybe we could end on that, and then do a recap. But this is a good episode.
So here's because we actually found some places where we agreed.
Mostly about where we're from. Leave it to us.
I think we both agreed that there's better things we can do with our voting system. I think we just disagreed on how crappy those decisions have been, like what we have decided are.
Yeah, but here again, we agree so much on the changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like we almost blow by them because they're so obvious.
Yeah.
When you're just thoughtful about it.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have those things? That is a
great question.
Hear about.
If we ever have the clout,
I want to hear commentary, like the comments below us, about that.
Yeah, if we ever have the clout, that's things I want to ask. That's what I want to ask our major politicians is like, why is this not a thing?
Well,
like,
we should
why don't we even just have like a system? Say what?
We should ask them when they're our colleagues.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Because I feel like there's a couple things. Like I think that voter purging is fine, but I think it should be done on a regular basis. So it's happening, and you have like every 4 years you have to re-register. They get completely purged every 4 years, but you have to re-register every 4 years. I feel like that's a good solution.
Yeah, I think we use other processes where it's like, hey, if you receive this and you don't need to make a change, no action is required. We will keep you on the register. But if it goes to someone's next of kin and they, oh no, they're dead, you get rid of it.
So the only problem with that is that's inclusion. Yeah, it's self-selection, which is not good in
we use it in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, but we ought not to. So like when you look at statistics, like if you do self-selected stuff, it's usually like you can't really take that as good statistics. It applies also in a lot of those other areas. Neither here nor there, though.
If you have a driver's license, you're registered to vote.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, granted, I guess you can get a driver's license if you aren't legally allowed to vote, but I think you could, like, if you get it, you can prove your citizenship then, and then you get it. Like, it's like a little extra thing on your driver's license. And yeah, you can get fraud.
You're registered to vote. Hey, you're just turned 18. You just became eligible to vote. Mm-hmm. You have a valid driver's license. If you are good being registered to vote, do nothing. That's
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and then weekend elections.
Because when you get your first driver's license, do you have to show your social security ID? I'm trying to remember. It's been a really long time since I've had to like register. Yeah.
I don't know if it was my social security card, but I had to prove,
Yeah, I can't remember how I proved that I was me.
Yeah, I think it was a social security card for me.
I think it might have been a social, which that proves your citizenship right there.
Yeah, or
you get the. I have a friend who recently
I like that. It uses technology. I think it's smart.
Either way, what were we talking about that before we talked about our future senatorial runs?
for what would it have to look like for you, Andrew,
For
that are
Trump.
primarily responsible for the January 6th insurrection?
So my main problem is that at the end of the day, I hold the people who take actions as the primary people who are responsible for those actions.
So think of it like this. The hitman in the mob,
Mm-hmm.
he took the action, but you know damn well he didn't call the shots.
No, but he still chose
So
to take the action. He chose to
sure,
be the hitman. So like at the end of the
sure.
day, like, yes, there were other people involved who bear culpability for it, and probably bear more culpability on a universal scale because they're probably calling a bunch of it. But at the end of the day,
That's how the law is.
the person who chose to take the illegal action or follow the illegal order is the one responsible for it. In the same way, like if you have a soldier who's been ordered to do something that's illegal, they are culpable for following the illegal order.
Sure.
And not saying, no, that is an illegal order, I am not following it.
So when is a mob boss responsible for
when they call for that action to happen, which Trump did not do?
Well, he said a lot of things.
Yeah, but our politicians say a lot of things. He used rhetoric that is standard for politicians. On the day, he said, we're going to walk over there and we're going to peacefully protest. Yes, and you can do this, but there are other people who did similar things. The person who shot up the congressional baseball game did the same thing because Bernie ratcheted up the thing. Like, there's equivalencies here. And so it's like, if you want it, so in order to answer your question, for me to say Trump bore the prime thing, he would have had to say to the crowd, we're going to march over there and we're going to go into the building and we're going to shout, we're going to make our, like, even if he said if we're going to go into the building and make our voices heard, then I would say he was responsible. But
we are going into the building is the
we're going
operative.
into the building, because that's clearly an illegal action. Like, you can't just go into the Capitol building. There's rules and laws set in place for how you get into it.
Here, I hear you and I
Mhm.
understand, and that, yes, that is very clear. Not even mob bosses are that specific. So this is not the legal definition.
Okay, but you're asking me to. So now we're asking, because you asked, like, at what point do I think Trump is the primary person, right?
Mhm.
And so now we're starting to quibble is where we're perceiving what Trump did. Like, I don't think that what happened was foreseeable by any rational human being, Trump included. I think that there were a lot of crazy people who took something too far, and they had planned to take something too far even before that rally. So, I mean, and you can disagree with that, particularly if you don't trust Trump, but I don't see that as as him being bearing primary culpability. He was a factor in it. There's an I word that my hard conversation book uses.
Insight.
No, not insight. It's like when you have multiple things that are affecting something.
I work.
Yeah, it's an I word because it was a very good word where it's like, it definitionally means.
Inner.
I'm looking at opening up my
Intersectional?
spreadsheet. No, it's.
I'm channeling Yali there, maybe.
Yeah, I know. Molly, display anger, raise your voice to talk about. Oh, those are the do nots.
Well,
oh well, I'll find it like 3 seconds after we get done.
Of course.
The shoot.
But I think we've come to a natural end.
We have come to a natural end,
and we've had a political conversation.
We have. We were friends before. We were friends before.
Friends during. I got like a sip left here.
Yeah, I do too. Friends after.
Friends after. Cheers, bud.
Oh, I have some news, so we're not going to talk about it when we're recording.
Welcome to Friendly Argument with Andrew Bernard and Jeremy Jones.
Let's do this.
New stuff,
All the tangents.
some politics, booze,
More politics.
stuff about Kansas, and lots of cheerseats.
Friendly Argument is a podcast showcasing conversations that seek common ground across the aisle of American politics, as well as a few laughs. We hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for watching.